I was invited to come and speak to the students and to the university about the position of women, feminism, women in Islam. And the message I want to leave them with is, if you take Islamic theology, so I'm not talking about Muslims, but Islamic doctrine, that the rules, the laws, the values that are espoused in there are hostile to women. And when they're practiced, we see terrible things happen to women. And we've heard about this, we've read about it. And I would like to start in Wisconsin. The idea that it's okay to scrutinize this Islamic theology, and not just, towards women, towards gay people, towards apostates, towards infidels. Scrutinize it, question it, and treat it like any other religion, treat it like any other political theory. That's the message I want to give them. It's okay to ask these questions, and that's how change begins. That when you're faced with terrorism, intimidation, threats, you have two choices. You give in and surrender, or you fight. And I find the stance to fight more persuasive. And you don't know whether you're going to win or not, but at least, defend yourself, fight. I'm glad I'm still alive and still fighting. And then there's this idea, if they can kill me, but they can't kill infidel. The book exists. They can't kill the next book. No man. Tonight when I speak, my speech will be recorded. That exists, that thought expression exists. The interview that I'm giving you now will be printed and circulated off the net. They can't kill that. So the old way of doing things, we'll kill the person whose thoughts we don't like, is not going to be so successful anyway, because those thoughts will outlive the person. There are wonderful people who want to protect me, and the rule of law in the United States, the government also does its bit. And so I take precautions, which obviously I can't talk about, to protect myself. But yeah, it's hard. But I always ask people, if you take a flight now from here to New York, do you think about whether it's safe or not to be on that flight? And that's what has changed since the 11th of November 2001. People no longer just, go from A to B. They think twice. And even if you don't think about it yourself, as soon as you arrive at the airport, you find yourself, in a situation where you are a potential terrorist. At least that's how you're treated. I think I see it both. I see people who responded to bin Laden's call to jihad and join hands to establish Islamic Sharia all over the world, who are persuaded by that, who have decided to go on his side, and that there's an increase in that number of people. But I also see people like the young man, Ismail, the neurologist here, who said basically he never believed in Islam to start with, but he's now becoming aware and is itching to do something, but doesn't want to face the consequences of being threatened, intimidated, killed, having to deal with that kind of thing. So I see both. And my objective is to create as much awareness as I possibly can. And that is then, I think that's when Muslims who are now blindly following these things and teaching Islamic theology to their children and their children's children, I think that's when they will pause to think about, what is it that I'm teaching my children? What is it that I want to learn? What is it that I believe in? And etc., etc. And I think that's how it starts. And I'm not going to say it's going to happen ever in my lifetime, but it's peaceful, What I noticed when I came to the West is some Westerners, when they talk about Islam, they conflate the people and the theology. And others say, well, there is Islam, the religion, and then there are a fringe group of, a small number of people who hijacked the religion and perverted it. I think it's very important to make the distinction Islam and Muslims, and then see the diversity in Muslims that there is, because there are some Muslims who practice all of their religion, some Muslims who don't. But Islamic doctrine itself, defined as the Quran, and following the example of Prophet Muhammad, and the hadith or sunnah he left behind. That is incompatible with Western liberal thought. It's incompatible with human rights. You will find there laws that dictate how women should be treated, how infidels should be treated, how Jews should be treated, how gay people should be treated, etc. That are, I would say, a frontal assault on the Declaration of Human Rights. So it is the theology, it's the doctrine, especially its social and political dimension. Islam also has a religious dimension, but that's not what we're talking about. I mean, what I'm discussing is not praying 5 times a day, fasting in the month of Ramadan, and going on pilgrimage to Mecca. That's not what I'm discussing.
Sure.
In an open liberal society like the United States, I can say that this is not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is not, oh, you are an extreme right-wing, neo-Nazist. Here is license to go after Muslim women and Muslim men and, treat them badly, discriminate against them. That's not my, and when I get the platform, and anyway, this is not my message, so I have the opportunity to say this is not what I mean. What I want to say is to the man who opens the Quran and says, it gives me permission to beat my wife, to say, it gives you permission to beat your wife, but you ought to go to jail and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And then someone else will come and say, it's not in the Quran, it's misinterpreted. And I'll say, no, look at chapter 4, verse 34, let's read it together. And you'll find it in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there are a group of people who describe themselves and see themselves as victims, but are not victims. They actually are the ones who are using their own religion and Islamic theology to commit atrocities. And then they just want to be excused from the normal judgment that everyone who wants to commit some atrocity and have power over other people gets. I think to recognize that Islamic theology is just another set of ideas, another set of beliefs, question that, recognize that Western ideas of liberty and secularism are superior, and engage Muslim individuals and say, you've looked and looked and looked into Islamic theology and it just doesn't help anything to keep gazing at the Quran. But here's an alternative set of ideas that you can take on. So keep engaging them. In a place like a university where young people come to have their minds opened, I think this is the place to do it. Moderate Christians, I would say, establish a church right next to every mosque in the United States and try and get, the congregation of Muslims to convert to Christianity. If you think it's a better, deal, I want to tell the enlightened, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, the atheist movement to say, well, why don't you go to every Islamic center, find out where it is, and establish right next to it an apartment or a house or an office, and try and reach out to the Muslims who go to these Islamic centers and engage them. Let's debate those radical imams who are indoctrinating our youth. That's where I seek competition. I don't consider myself religious, but I'm doing my bit by, for instance, doing this, because I think the focus on women is very, very important. The emancipation of women is, in the long term, going to really get rid of this problem.